Coming up next on the Union Label will be a conversation with J.R. Gray, our former Labor Secretary, longtime lawmaker, and machinist union official. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Barry. Good to be with you.
I'll ask you the question I always ask guests on the program. It's a two-part question.
Okay.
First, what has the labor movement meant to you personally, and what do you think the labor movement has meant to the American working class?
Well, I'll take those in the order that you ask them. The labor movement, to me, has meant a lot. It's meant the difference between survival and not survival. It opened doors for me that I never dreamed might be open to me. It gave me the opportunity to learn a trade, which, by the way, is journeyman machinist, which I happened to have served that apprenticeship under the United Steelworkers Union in northern Indiana back, years and years ago. But the labor movement to me has meant a great livelihood. It's been a labor of love, really, because I've always, I guess you'd say, been for the underdog. If I thought somebody was being mistreated, I always liked to come to their rescue. I took a great deal of satisfaction during all my union members of helping to improve the wages, the hours, the working conditions, the fringe benefits, which, by the way, as you're aware, have become more and more important as time has gone along. And it just gave me a great feeling of satisfaction if I could walk in and negotiate a contract for one of my local unions and their members, and being able to walk away and think, we had some real accomplishments there. So it absolutely has been a labor of love. It's been a great experience. It also opened up the doors for me to make a run for political office, which, by the way, I had no plans whatsoever of trying to ever seek public office. It's just one of those things that happened. I was thinking earlier, I've been blessed in my lifetime. I seem to have always been standing at the right spot at the right time or something of this nature. And of course, obviously, I was looking for opportunities, If you have no ambition, I think you have no drive to keep on pushing and trying to do the great things that, we do. And it's been great, something that I have deeply appreciated. And I think kind of getting into your second question just a little bit, I feel like my participation in the labor movement and all the associated activities that go along with it has meant a great deal to the workforce throughout Western Kentucky. I think we've set some real standards. The other thing, too, that I would quickly comment on is that our union, the machinist union, was always pretty much in the forefront when it came down to fighting for OSHA standards. The overtime hours, all these different things of this nature. They were always very active in the political arena. And I guess back in 1967, when I first became active with the machinist union, which, by the way, I was, I guess, one of the youngest staff representatives that they had at that time. And I was really, I guess I started to say shocked. That's not really the proper terminology for it. But it was a real eye-opener for me to hear our leadership within the union talk about the importance of political activity, how that with one stroke of the pen, a president, a governor, or somebody could take away major rights that we've enjoyed all this time. And of course, that prompts me to think about the situation going on up in, I guess, Wisconsin, with Governor Walker up there. This is a prime example of how that a person in a position of power like that can really do great harm to the welfare of the average family out there in their particular state. So, you know, as I said, it's been a labor of love, something I have tremendously enjoyed, and hope to be able to continue contributing a little bit to that cause.
So, when did it all start for you, and where did it all start for you as a union member?
Yeah, I suppose that my story would be very similar to a lot of other people back in that time frame. I graduated from high school, and I had no immediate plans, which broke my parents' heart, to go to college. I just didn't feel like there was anything that college had to offer me at that time. I didn't know what I wanted to do, to tell you the truth about it. There was only one main goal I had at that time, is I wanted to get married and have a family, and, you know, do all the things that everyone else does. And there just was not very many job opportunities, that at least that paid a decent wage in this area at that time for me to get involved in. So a number of my friends had migrated north to what we call the Calumet region, Chicago, East Chicago, Hammond, Gary, that area.
Big steel producing area.
Yeah, the South Shores of Lake Michigan area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I had heard about some good job opportunities there, so that was the direction that I headed. And I think I wound up in town on a Sunday night, and jobs were plentiful, good paying jobs. I forget exactly how much of a raise in pay that I got by migrating to that area. And I think it was Wednesday morning then, I reported for my first, I guess you could say, real job. And that job was working for the Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company, which is based out of Youngstown, Ohio, at East Chicago, Indiana, right there on the shores of the lake. And they were represented by the employees there, which I've forgotten the exact number. It seemed like it was somewhere approaching maybe 10,000 people that was employed at that facility. They were represented by Local 1011 of the United Steelworkers of America. And I never will forget, of course, growing up on the farm, in western Kentucky, I'd never heard much about unions. I didn't dislike unions. I didn't have any reason to, but I just was not aware of the function that they really play in society at that time.
Well, now, did you grow up in Marshall County?
No, I grew up in Lyon County over near Eddyville.
Okay.
And in fact, my wife and I both grew up in that area over there. She grew up in what's now the land between the lakes, used to be called Between the Rivers section, there in Lyon County. I graduated from high school there in Lyon County, and almost immediately, I hung around to see if anything was going to happen for a period of months, because, like I said, I didn't want to go off and leave that little blonde. You know how that works out.
How long have you been married?
It will be 1956, whatever that figures out to be. I think it's about 55 years now, or something like that. Yeah. And anyhow, when I landed there at the steel mills and started working, I was open-minded. The one thing that impressed me was that the assistant personnel director or human resources director, whatever it was called at that time, had told me, that what kind of a wage that I was going to be making. But he also told me that I'd be required to join the union, and that that would be $5 a month, to pay union dues. And I never will forget thinking about this, and it's a lesson that I'll always remember. I thought, my gosh, $5. I said, that's not much more money I could have for spending money if I didn't have to join the union. But as I said, I was observant, And it didn't take me too long to realize from some of the things that I saw happen in the shop and everything, and the union rep come in with his United Steelworkers jacket on, you know, and there'd be something going on, and he and management would meet, and, you know, everybody'd shake hands and walk off, and the problem, whatever it was solved. So I saw right away that, you know, there was a lot of advantages to having a good, strong union representing you in the workplace. So that led me into the machinist apprenticeship program because I was working in what we call a maintenance machine shop. And I worked as a helper for well over 2 years before I went into the apprenticeship program. And because of that experience that I had gained, when I actually entered the apprenticeship program, they knocked a full year off of the time that I had to serve because of the experience that overlapped what I would be getting.
So while you were a member of the Steelworkers, you were attending an apprenticeship program operated by the machinists.
Well, actually, the apprenticeship program was operated by the United Steelworkers.
Oh, okay.
In conjunction, this was all worked out between Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company and USW. They had apprenticeship programs for electricians, instrument techs,
Okay.
Boilermakers, you name it. You know, they had just about every craft that you
Well, that's
can
interesting
think
because,
of.
you know, you think of the steelworkers as an industrial union and not exactly a craft union. And of course, the machinists are kind of both industrial and craft.
A mix, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So anyhow, I was delighted when I got that journeyman machinist card because that enabled me to start looking for jobs back in the area. And having that journeyman card in my pocket is what, you know, assured me eventually of having a decent paying job here in the area. So after a 7-year hiatus, so to speak, I was able to return back home and see all my family and friends that I'd missed, you know, for all those years and so forth. And it just kind of kept going from there. I worked for in one of the chemical plants for a little over 3 years.
Which one was that?
B.F. Goodrich.
Which is now what?
Oh,
I can't
sure.
keep up with them. I mean, yeah.
They keep, you know, switching ownership so often that they're hard to, you know, hard to keep up with. I got active. I was never one just to take an answer as being, you know, the answer. I had to question it. I had to make sure that whoever was telling me that was right. And I ran into quite a bit of that when I first went to work at Goodrich. Of course, obviously, you know, had a probationary period, and I didn't raise too many questions while I was, you know, still a temporary employee. But as it went on, I got quite active in the union, which really
that was the machinist union.
That was
there.
the machinist.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Local 1294, which is still existent today. And District 154 is where I eventually became the business agent for the union there. But at any rate, the guys in the shop, working in that maintenance shop where I worked, they all got to watching me, and they noticed that, you know, I raised a lot of questions about a lot of things. And the union steward, this is probably, I don't know, a year after I had arrived there and started working. The union steward that we had at that time resigned, and he took a position with the company as a supervisor. So some of the older union members, when I say older, not necessarily in age, but tenure at the plant, came to me, and a number of them always just called me Kid. And they said, "Kid, we want you to do something for us." I said, "Yeah." I said, "What's this?" They said, "We want you to run for maintenance union steward." I said, "You got to be out of your mind." I said, "I don't know anything about, you know, what to do in a job like that." They said, "Well," excuse me, they said, "if you will take the position, we'll guarantee you we'll be behind you. We'll help you in every possible way we can. But we just feel like you can do the job. We feel like you're someone that's needed in that position." So little be knowing to me, the main one that had talked to me about it, he went back and he told the rest of the crews out there, he said, "Look, if you want him to take that job, you better go talk to him, because I don't have a commitment out of him yet." So anyhow, Make a long story short on that one, they talked to me. I did somewhat reluctantly agree to accept the position and run for it, which I did, and wound up with it. I served there for, in that particular position, I guess probably a year and a half. And the chief steward, which was a dear friend of mine, was one of the first ones that talked to me about the maintenance steward job. He came to me and he said, "Hey, kid," he said, "I need to talk to you." I said, "Okay, Jess, what you got on your mind?" He said, "I'm getting kind of tired of fighting this stuff." He was the chief steward for the union.
What's his last name?
Hodge. He's from over in Marion, around Marion area, Crittenden County, and was a dear friend. And he said, and he put it in exactly his words, he said, "I'm about ready for some of you young bucks to take some of this stuff on and fight some of these causes." And he said, "You've done a good job as being maintenance steward." And he said, "I've talked to a lot of people out in the plant, and they want you to take the chief steward job if you will do it." I said, "Jess, I'm going to tell you something, just like I told you before. I'm inexperienced at that." And I said, "I don't know if that might be over my head or not." And he said, "Nah," he said, "I've watched you." He said, "You can do it. I'll make you the same commitment. We'll all help you be successful with it. You won't have any problem." So we went through this process of people coming and talking to me, wanting me to take the job, and I agreed to do that one. So at any rate, I held that position, I don't know, until sometime up in March of '67, I guess, was when the turn came.
Here's another question I've asked a lot of people. What makes a good union steward?
Well, that's a pretty broad question, Barry, and I have thought about that myself. And back in my younger days in the labor movement, I could be quite hot-headed, if you will, but I got to finding out as time went on that if I would kind of mellow my approach a little bit, it seemed to work better. I guess it gets back to that old story about you can catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar.
That's what Abraham Lincoln said. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I kind of, tempered my rhetoric, for lack of a better expression, and I was able to talk to people, reason with them, and fortunately we had some people within management that were quite sympathetic to workers' rights from time to time, and they were willing to sit down and listen to reason. So that's, the position I got to, and I think that you've got to realize that when you're in a position, whether it's management or if it's union, that it's not a one-way street. It's two-sided. If you make your work rules so tight that management cannot make a profit off of your labor, then they don't need you anymore. You're going to be on the layoff list at that point. So you have to temper all of it, and you got to realize that without labor, there'd be no management, and without management, there'd be no labor. So it's been a two-way street, and I carried that on into the labor management days later on down in another part of my life, and that was what I did. I kind of tempered my arguments. I tried to not ask for anything that I thought was unreasonable, and consequently, I think we made some great strides by approaching it in that manner. And that's pretty much a philosophy, there has been of the machinist union for years, was to recognize the fact that, you have to have management in order to have a union, and vice versa. So with that understanding, I went on down the line pretty good on it then.
So after chief steward, what did you become?
Well, that kind of leads me into a thought that I just had, about that. I had been chief steward for, I don't know, a year maybe or something like that. And we had two what we call business representatives with District 154 of the Machinist Union. Both of them decided to get out at one time. So when I heard about it.
Who were they?
Charles Thompson was one. He was out of the old Penwalt plant.
Mm-hmm.
And I had his name on the tip of my tongue. The second one, maybe it'll come back to me here in a little bit. But at any rate, he was more a construction type worker. He had went out on jobs primarily where they'd be installing mechanical equipment, and there had to be precise and precision alignments made, to make everything work right and everything. Wayne Cash was his name. But when I learned, I was at the meeting when they both tendered their resignations. I went back to the shop the next morning. I went, "Hey, Jess, we need to talk." He said, "What are you going down, kid?" I said, "I've let you talk me into something 2 times." And I said, "It's gotten into my blood." And I said, "The business representatives positions, and they're only going to fill one, both became vacant last night." And I said, "I want that position." He looked at me and he said, "I'll just have to see if I can help you get it then." So I ran and won the race to become the directing business representative for that district lodge up there. And
What year was that?
That would have been in early March of 1967. And I stayed with that position for just under 20 years. Basically, it was 20 years, and decided that I needed to step down, take another look around. In the meantime, I had been elected to the House of Representatives, back in 1975 was my first election. And I kind of felt like I wanted to go further, maybe somewhat in the political arena than where I was. So I went ahead and stepped down after 20 years as being the union rep, made that run for the General Assembly, and stayed with that for 26 years.
While you were DBR, I vividly remember when you brought the international president to Calvert City, William Wimpesinger. In fact, that was back when I wrote for the Paducah Sun Democrat and Paducah Sun. I tell people it was when I was thin and had hair. That was a long time ago. In fact, I had a full beard then. And I remember talking to him before, and he was from Cleveland.
Yeah.
Big Cleveland Browns football fan, so we talked about that. But I thought that was pretty much a feather in your cap to bring the international president to Calvert City, Kentucky. But he gave a great talk and he's a great guy. Did you know him pretty well, get to know him pretty well?
Fairly well, I guess about as closely as you could know someone when you're way out in the field in western Kentucky and they're in an office complex in Washington, D.C. I felt like I knew him quite well. He was, in spite of his, I guess you'd say, rough and tumble look and attitude at times,
Smoked a big cigar.
Yeah, and he had a heart bigger than this room.
He did, yeah.
And he and I had just an excellent working relationship. In fact, I always told him, I said, "Look, I will not bother you with petty issues. So you can bet if I call you on the phone and say I need some help, then I'm desperate, I need help." He said, "You'll get it." And that was just the way that he and I, that was our working relationship.
I always thought it was funny that he was a big guy, but his nickname was Wimpy.
Yeah,
which
Wimpy.
Of course, and you think, well, doesn't quite fit this guy. But in any event, but I remember that was back in, I think it was late '80 or early '81, somewhere along there.
It could have been in the early '80s, yeah.
Yeah. So you make the transition from labor leader to politician.
Dual role there for a pretty good period of years.
And that's fairly common. I mean, you do run across that. And then you were chair of the Labor and Industry Committee for how long?
Gosh, the majority of the years that I was there, I would say probably about 20 years or or something close to that. I served a total of 26 years in the House.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I chaired that committee the overwhelming majority of the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I presided over the funeral of several bills during that time period that were in the interest of the working people.
Exactly. In the time we have left, which is about 3 minutes, what were some of these bills that you were talking about?
Most prevalent was right to work, which is the right to work for less, is what it comes down to. And the other one was we had a group of people that was always trying to destroy the prevailing wage law in the state of Kentucky, which is what guarantees workers they're going to have a decent amount of pay. And I lost track of how many times that I personally killed those two bills.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you were undoubtedly labor's best friend in Frankfort for years and years and years. And I remember during the Fletcher administration when they made a really strong push for right to work and prevailing wage. And you were up there in the middle of all that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I took a calculated risk on that one, which turned out to be the right risk to take, and we'll elaborate on that at a future date.
Let's do that. Indeed. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
It's been with us today, and we'll just turn around and do this again really soon. How about that?
A great day to reminisce about some things that have happened.
There you go.
And we'll reminisce about some others.
We'll do that. My guest today was J.R. Gray, former Kentucky Labor Secretary, longtime lawmaker, former machinist union official. I'm Barry Craig. We'll see you next time.